Have you ever sat alone in a room full of people, scrolling through your phone, seeing 100 stories, 1,000 posts, and still felt strangely disconnected? Maybe you've smiled at a funny meme, tapped like on a friend's vacation photo, or even shared a reel that made you laugh out loud, but then paused and asked yourself, why do I still feel so empty right now? You're not alone. In fact, that very feeling might be the biggest paradox of our modern lives. Hey there, before we dive in, I want you to think about this. When was the last time you had a conversation that made you feel seen, like really understood, not just replied to with an emoji or a thumbs up? Just keep that in the back of your mind as we go along, because we're about to unravel something that affects all of us, whether you're 18 or 80. Now, let's imagine this together. It's a quiet evening. You're at home. You open your phone and suddenly, you're connected to the world. Friends, family, classmates, co-workers, all just a tap away. A cousin you haven't seen in years is posting vacation photos from Italy. A former co-worker shares a motivational quote. A childhood friend just checked in with a, "Hey, remember this?" photo from 20 years ago. Feels like community, doesn't it? But here's the twist. At the exact same time, more people than ever are reporting deep feelings of loneliness, depression, and isolation. Statistically, loneliness is now considered a public health crisis. And many of us, especially in the middle of our digital lives, are quietly suffering in silence. Isn't that odd? We have more access, more reach, more interaction than any generation before us, and yet something feels off. And that, my friend, is where the paradox lives. So what's going on here? Let me ask you this. Have you ever noticed that the more time you spend online connecting with people, the less energy you sometimes have to connect with the ones physically right in front of you? Maybe you've seen it at the dinner table, a couple sitting together, each staring at their phones. Or in a waiting room, where everyone's silently scrolling instead of smiling or saying, hello. It's become so normal we hardly question it. But deep down, we all know something's missing. We're connecting constantly, but we're rarely bonding. That difference is huge. True connection isn't just about seeing someone's photo or reacting to a status. It's about shared presence, empathy, eye contact, laughter that echoes in the same room. The kind of moments you remember not because you liked them, but because you lived them. So here's where I want you to join in. Pause for a moment and think, when was the last time you had a conversation that went beyond the surface? One where you felt comfortable being vulnerable, honest, maybe even awkward, but real? If it's been a while, that's okay. You're not broken. This isn't a lecture. It's just the beginning of noticing something important, something all of us, regardless of age or background, can relate to. Because whether you're a teenager navigating high school, a parent juggling a career and kids, or a retiree discovering new hobbies, you've likely felt that strange contradiction of being surrounded by people online, and still feeling profoundly alone. But here's the beautiful thing, awareness is power. And the more we understand what's happening, the more intentional we can become about how we interact, not just with others, but with ourselves. In the next part of this video, we're going to look deeper into why this paradox exists, how social media was built to connect us, but also how its very structure might be part of what's driving this quiet loneliness. We'll unpack some surprising truths, share real-life stories, and talk about what we can do to reconnect in a way that feels truly human again. So stick around. This isn't just about social media. It's about you, me, and what it really means to feel alive and connected in a world that never stops talking but rarely listens. And maybe that's the heart of it. We've mistaken interaction for intimacy. When we heart a post or send a quick emoji, it gives a hit of connection, a microdose of being noticed. But does that moment of digital contact actually fill the deeper human need we all carry? To be known, to be heard, to be held in someone's attention with no distractions? Most of us don't even notice it happening. It's like hunger. You can snack all day, little bites here and there, chips, cookies, sips of soda, but none of it truly satisfies. And by the time you realize you're starving for something real, it's hard to remember what a nourishing meal even feels like. Social media was never the problem itself. In fact, it started as a beautiful idea. Bridging distance, helping people stay in touch, rekindling old friendships, finding communities of shared interest. But over time, that tool became a substitute. And a substitute, no matter how shiny, can never replace the real thing. Let me ask you, Have you ever posted something hoping for a specific person to see it? Or refreshed your feed just to check how many likes you've gotten? That's not vanity. That's vulnerability. That's the human desire for affirmation, belonging, and value showing up in a modern form. And it's deeply relatable. Now, think about how platforms are designed. Endless scrolling. Notifications engineered to trigger dopamine. Algorithms deciding what we see based not on truth or closeness, but on what keeps us engaged the longest. It's a brilliant system, from a tech standpoint. But for our emotional health, maybe not so much. Because instead of fostering connection, it often fuels comparison. You might open your feed with the intention to relax, catch up, maybe get inspired. And within minutes, you're staring at someone's perfect vacation, their child's achievements, their fit body, their clean kitchen. And without even realizing it, a quiet voice creeps in. Why isn't my life like that? That's when loneliness deepens. Not just the absence of company, but the sense that you're somehow falling behind, invisible. Listen. And again, you're not alone in feeling this way. This is exactly how many people, from high schoolers to grandparents, end up trapped in cycles of feeling disconnected despite being more connected than ever. Here's something worth reflecting on. Meaningful connection requires effort. It takes time. It asks for patience, presence, and even discomfort. And in a world that values speed, convenience, and smooth surfaces, those qualities are harder to find and harder to offer. But that doesn't mean they're lost. In fact, some of the most meaningful conversations happen not in perfect moments, but in messy ones. In phone calls where someone cries and doesn't apologize. In long walks where silence says more than words. In handwritten notes. In shared meals without screens. We don't need more contacts. We need more depth. So, what can we do? Start by noticing. Notice when a scroll session leaves you feeling emptier instead of fuller. Notice when you're using a screen to avoid a feeling or replace a conversation. That's not judgment, that's awareness. And awareness is where all change begins. Maybe the next time you're tempted to send a quick text, you make a call instead. Or instead of liking a friend's photo, you comment with a genuine question, "How are you really doing these days?" Or maybe, you just show up at their door with coffee and time to listen. For some, especially older adults, the temptation might be to disengage completely from technology, just throw the phone away. But let's not swing to extremes. These tools can bring connection when used with intention. A grandparent video calling their grandchild. A book club across 3 states. A supportive message from someone you haven't seen in years. Those moments matter. The point isn't to abandon social media. It's to reclaim its place in our lives. To make sure we are using the tool and not being used by it. So let's ask each other, what kind of connection are we truly craving? Not just the visible kind, but the kind that leaves you breathing a little deeper afterward. The kind that lingers in your memory not because it was posted, but because it was felt. Think back to a moment in your life, maybe recent, maybe years ago, when someone gave you their full attention. When they listened without interrupting. When they saw you. Hold on to that for a second. Now imagine if more of our days were filled with that kind of presence. That's not just a dream. It's possible. But it starts small, with a choice, a pause, a conversation that goes one layer deeper than usual. And maybe it starts with this one, right here, right now. Maybe what we're really searching for isn't more followers, more likes, or more updates. It's more presence. It's those moments where we feel like we truly exist in someone else's world, not as a post, not as a ping, but as a person. Think about the last time someone looked you in the eye and said, "I'm here for you." No distractions. No glancing at their phone mid-sentence. Just a pause and presence. That kind of moment can change everything. So how do we create more of that? How do we move from this state of passive scrolling to active living? It starts, surprisingly, with small and ordinary things. Let's say you're out for coffee. Instead of checking your phone while you wait in line, you strike up a simple "good morning" to the person next to you. Maybe nothing comes of it, or maybe it sparks a smile, a short chat, a connection. And that alone is worth something. Or maybe tonight, instead of scrolling in bed, you call your sibling. Or a friend you haven't spoken to in months. You don't need a big reason. You just say, "Hey, I was thinking about you." And you stay on the line long enough for the conversation to go somewhere unexpected. See, the beauty of real connection isn't that it's perfect, it's that it's real. Sometimes it's messy. Sometimes it's awkward. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. But it's also honest. And that's what we're hungry for. Now if you're someone who feels shy, or like maybe you've been out of touch for too long, here's something to remember. It's never too late to reach out. Relationships are not scoreboards. You don't need the perfect words, or a big gesture. Sometimes a simple "I miss you" is more than enough. And if you're in a place where you feel like you don't have anyone to reach out to right now, first of all, I want to acknowledge that pain. It's real. And it's heavy. But you're not alone. Even this moment here, where you and I are sharing these thoughts, that's a form of connection. It's digital, yes. But it's also human. Because you're thinking. You're feeling. And somewhere in the world, I was too, when I first wrote these words. Now imagine if more of us used these platforms not to impress, but to express. Not to perform, but to relate. What would change? Maybe instead of chasing viral content, we'd share meaningful moments, photos of quiet joy, questions that matter, stories that aren't polished but true. Maybe we'd comment less with emojis, and more with compassion. Maybe we'd stop treating our feeds like highlight reels, and start using them as open journals, glimpses into our real and complicated lives. And what if we treated our time online like a shared living room instead of a stage? A place where everyone is welcome to sit down and be heard, even if they're not perfectly framed or filtered. There's a quiet power in that shift, from "look at me" to "let's talk." From "click to like" to "stay and listen." One of the most beautiful things about being human is that we're wired for connection. We're not meant to carry our lives alone, even though modern culture often pushes us toward individualism, efficiency, and productivity at all costs. But the richest parts of life, they aren't efficient. They aren't scalable. They happen in slow, sacred spaces, like long talks at midnight, shared laughter over nothing, helping someone move, crying in front of a friend and not being told to cheer up. Maybe, in a strange and beautiful way, this paradox of loneliness in a connected world is a wake-up call. A gentle reminder that real connection was never about proximity or technology. It was always about intention. So, here's something to reflect on. What kind of connection do you want to build more of in your life? Is it more time with family? More honest conversations with old friends? Or maybe it's simply reconnecting with yourself, slowing down enough to notice your thoughts, your feelings, your needs. Whatever it is, I promise, it's not too late. And it doesn't have to start big. Maybe you turn off your phone for an hour tomorrow and just sit with someone you love. Maybe you reach out to one person today and say, "I've been meaning to talk." Maybe you decide to use your online space a little differently, less polished, more present. Whatever you choose, know this. Real connection won't demand perfection from you. It will simply ask for your presence. And maybe, just maybe, the real paradox isn't that we feel lonely in a connected world. It's that feeling lonely is what reminds us that we're wired to connect in the first place. You see, loneliness isn't a weakness. It's not a flaw in your character. It's a signal, like hunger, like thirst. A quiet message from your soul saying, "I need more." Not more content. Not more followers. More meaning. More presence. More real. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman in her 70s, living alone after her husband passed away. Every evening, she'd sit on the porch with a cup of tea, scrolling through her phone. Her kids lived across the country. Her friends were busy, and the internet became her companion. One day, she decided to write a handwritten letter to an old friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Just a simple note, "I was thinking about you today. I miss our talks." She mailed it, half expecting no reply. A week later, she got a letter back. Then another. Then a phone call. And soon, Sunday evenings became their catch-up ritual. Old stories, new thoughts, laughter that brought warmth back into her quiet home. No app could have done that. But intention could. Now think about your own life. Maybe you're younger, balancing a busy schedule and a crowded mind. Or maybe you're older, wondering how to feel relevant in a world that moves faster every day. Wherever you are, whatever stage you're in, the truth is the same. You matter. Your voice matters. And your connections, no matter how small they seem, can ripple out in ways you can't yet imagine. Sometimes we think the world needs grand gestures, huge movements, dramatic changes. But often, what it really needs is someone to ask, "How are you really?" Someone to sit with us, without rushing to fix, impress, or distract. Someone who shows up, not perfectly, but fully. And sometimes, that someone can be you, for someone else. A neighbor. A friend. A grandchild. A stranger at the grocery store who just needed to be seen. So let's stop measuring connection by bars on a screen or reaction counts on a post. Let's measure it by presence, by moments, by the echoes of real conversation that stay with us long after the screen goes dark. You don't need to delete all your apps. You don't need to become a different person. You just need to remember what it feels like to be human in a world that's often too loud to listen. If this message found its way to you today, it's likely because your heart already knew it to be true. You just needed someone to put it into words. And now, perhaps there's someone else out there who needs to hear it too. Let that voice be yours. Final message, a gentle reminder. In a world where notifications never stop buzzing and endless feeds compete for our attention, pause and remember this. You were never meant to navigate life alone. Real connection doesn't come from perfect phrases or curated images. It grows in presence. It thrives in patience. It lives in moments of quiet honesty. So take a breath. Put the phone down. Look someone in the eye. Ask a deeper question. You matter. Your presence matters. And sometimes, it's the simplest act of reaching out that opens the deepest bond. Let your next connection be one that's truly felt, not just seen.